So I write articles from time to time that I post online on my website on Facebook. And I recently wrote this one article called No as an Act of Creation. So in this article, I break down the different stages of actually setting boundaries and how that affects the nervous system. And this post has over 250 shares, almost more shares than it does responses to the post, which I found incredibly fascinating. Why is this topic the thing that is generating so much activity and so much interest from other people? And then I reflected on my life and the things that have held me back, and it all comes down to this: being unable to articulate the things that were important to me at the time when it mattered most. That is the barrier that prevents us from living the fullest expression of our lives. That is the source and cause for our deepest sorrow, our pain, our struggles in relationships, how we show up in the world. It all comes down to that. If we have inhibitions around fear, about being authentically vulnerable, we are withholding aspects of ourselves, the most important aspects of ourselves. The things that we care about most never make it to the surface to be seen and felt and heard by other people. How could we ever hope to develop deep, intimate relationships if that's the case? How could we hope to develop a society that is actually held on a foundation of virtue, noble qualities? It can't be done. This is the work that we have to cultivate the capacity to say no when the answer is no, and to say yes when our heart is calling for a yes, even though it's scary, even though we're afraid, even though we're nervous. I'm known in the Vancouver community as a spoken word artist, which is hilarious to me when I look back on my life, because one of my strongest memories in high school is standing in front of my English class in grade 10, shaking and covering my face with the piece of paper that I was holding as I read a poem to the class. My skin was just flushed with intense heat, and I started tearing up. I was so scared. My hands were shaking, but I couldn't lower the paper because then everybody would see how red my face was. And if that was the case, I would have just broke down. So terrified, I stumbled my way through the poem and slowly lowered it down. And it was just dead silence in the classroom. I was horrified. It was one of my biggest fears, sharing in front of people. And then lo and behold, one beautiful savior in the class, he was a new kid in school. He just started clapping. And he was like, woo! And slowly the rest of the students started clapping politely, and I skidded over to my chair and sat down and just hid my face. It was terrifying for me. But that clap, that encouragement, that one person sharing some form of gratitude for me, taking the risk of being vulnerable, even though it was terrifying, catalyzed a life-changing transformation for me. I've shared spoken word poetry in front of hundreds of people on main stages alongside international performers. The fear I have around sharing is dissolved. It's not present anymore. This is what is possible when we start taking the risk of being vulnerable, of expressing our truth, and especially supporting each other in that process. If you see somebody who is struggling to communicate something that's important to them, give them encouragement. Listen to them. Make it your sole priority to understand them as fully as possible and to honor what it is that they are trying so desperately to communicate to you. Maybe this will inspire you to do the same, because this is the way that we change our world. We have to be clear with our no's, and we have to be clear with our yeses. It's infinitely more important to practice this than it is to share an article that's written on Facebook. So this is the task that I give to you if you're watching this video. Talk to somebody today. Share something that's important to you, something that is vulnerable that you wouldn't necessarily share, and then open yourself up to receive that other person's truth. Give them gratitude and respect for this immense task of becoming a fuller expression of yourselves, a liberated version of the human that you are meant to be. Have a beautiful day.